Hey guys, we're gonna get started in a second. We're just waiting for Gareth, the co-host, to join us, and then we'll get started. There's Gareth. Hey, buddy.
I see we got the uniform on. I'm missing my glasses though.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
How's your day been?
Good, brother. Good. It's been enjoying the heat, getting some work done. Went for a dip in the pool. Pretty solid.
I have a belly full of barbecue and chocolate. So
Yes.
if you start to see me go like this, it's just because I'm falling asleep.
Falling asleep.
Um,
See, what would have
do you
been
want to jump?
smart
What's that?
to save the chocolate till after the live. That's what I
I
should have done.
know.
My
I
dessert.
I haven't slept much the past couple of days, so I think tonight's going to be an early night, anyways.
Sweet.
Um,
Love it.
do you want to jump in and get started?
Yeah, man. Let's do it, man. It's another installment. Little We As Live installment. So what we talking about? Tell the people what we're talking about.
Oh, Jesus, where to begin? Well, one of the things that you and I talk a lot about is sort of the concept of fear and how fear can prevent you from being the best version of yourself. And I know that word is a little bit, it gets a little redundant. And a lot of people talk about fears and your inhibitions. And I think you and I sort of stumbled across another way of looking at it that, less to do with fear and more to, because that's kind of a negative approach to it, and more to do with bravery, which is sort of the opposite of fear. That's a positive, empowering thing that you can have. But even the act of being brave, even the act of exhibiting bravery, whether it's letting your children climb to the top of a play structure, or whether it's trying a new job or a new hobby, or even perhaps more importantly, the bravery required to even communicate differently with your loved ones and show up as a different version of yourself, potentially a better version of yourself. And I think what we said was, well, even that can be daunting and overwhelming, and oftentimes people won't know where to fucking start if it's not a magic wand that you just say, I'm brave. So the concept that we said, well, what about if you just kind of fake it, you know, and not to imply that it's disingenuous and that you're phony, but you fake it, and this is not our saying, but you fake it until you make it. And why not apply that with acts of bravery if it's on a journey to become a better version of yourself and to improve? So that's sort of where we left off, and we want to explore, and of course, as always, we welcome comments and feedback on any of our podcast platforms. But we'd love to explore is there any legitimacy to the concept of fake it until you make it with regards to an act of bravery?
Yeah. Um, so I think the big thing that's been going around in my head the last few days, and we put this topic up there and we kind of discussed it as you heard, is the that like anything, a skill mastered is one that's continuously repeated. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's bravery. It doesn't matter if it's financial planning or fucking Olympic clean and jerk. Like you master a skill when you practice it continuously, but you also stay open to learning. So, and I think about, I relate that to bravery in the example that you gave, letting your kid climb to the top of the climbing frame is the same thing as we have to let them do that, because when we allow ourselves to continually practice that bravery of letting that happen in front of our eyes, even though we're petrified that they're going to break every limb in their body if they fall off, is that we're going to develop that skill to see, hey, they
Yeah.
are competent. Yeah, they might slip, but next time they'll learn that, and it allows them to learn at the same time. And the more we do that, the more confident we become. And it's like any skill that's mastered. And, is it like freaking 10,000 hours or something to master a skill? So,
Yeah.
we got to be brave 10,000 times
Yeah.
before maybe we feel, before we feel confident in that bravery around maybe just a certain topic or subject. And I guess the message, we could wrap it up with this, is if you don't start being brave now, you're never going to fucking make it. It's going to take you 10,000 times. Just drop the mic there.
Yeah.
And we're wrapped today.
Have a great night. I was taking a couple of notes, just so that I don't lose my train of thought, but using that analogy of, the 10,000 hours, and whether it's 10,000 hours or more simplified, to create the mastery of something, we often set that framework when we want to improve either a part of our emotion or mental makeup or our physical makeup. So if you want to shoot a free throw, you're going to shoot 10,000 hours, you're going to have better free throws. But the shitty thing is, and this is what not enough, in my opinion, not enough people are actually talking about, especially men, is you could also become a master of the bad things. You can become a master of the obstacles. You can become a master of the negative anchors that are holding you down. You can become a master at fear, because if you practice it enough, and we may not look at it as practice, unlike a basketball free throw, but when you practice being fearful, or when you practice showing up in a certain way, you will become a fucking master at that. So we also need to be cognizant that just as much as we can practice becoming great at something, we can also practice becoming really shitty at something. And it makes me think of your podcast yesterday, We as Difference Makers, is that whole concept of you have to unlearn to learn. And we're a lot of parallels there, is maybe to dovetail that, is you have to unlearn through sort of changing your 10,000 hour approach, so that you can relearn what is actually important.
Yeah, because if we look at it on a macro level, if you spend 10,000 hours mastering being a shithead, it's going to take a while to not be a shithead anymore.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, right? I just use that as an example because mainly for reaction. But it makes complete sense that it lands, and we need to. And actually, we just made a great point there. Practicing whatever we need to do to develop habits and new behaviors is exactly that, right? Like, you think about it from the parenting metaphor that we use. So that it was a great way to kind of summarize that. Is if you're going to be brave and you're going to let your child go about something, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be climbing a climbing frame. It could be anything in regards to parenting. But I just feel like that's a big thing, because we learn a lot of stuff that's not practical from how we grew up. We bring that, and then we're either maybe we're way too brave with not enough caution, or the opposite of that, we're a fucking helicopter parent. We don't let them do anything, which means basically our kids will be fucked when they go out in the real world, because they're going to have learned nothing and developed no resilience and no ability to overcome adversity. So we need to kind of step back and let them do that. And that's our new behavior, which imprints a new behavior on the people we surround ourselves with.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. And the way that I think about it, specifically as a father, but maybe there's much more macro applications to this concept, is you can't allow your fear to impact someone else's bravery. And if we think about our children, if you're scared that your kid's going to break an arm, your fear, and not letting your kid climb the play structure, your fear is going to impact that child's bravery. And the problem is, as you said, Gareth, then it becomes symptomatic of how they cope with life. And maybe, you think about it in a relationship. If you, as a man, if we are fearful of opening up and being vulnerable and talking to one another, the impact of our fear is going to affect someone else's bravery. So I think what we realized the other morning was that there's an absolute huge correlation between the two, right? And we use kids as an example, but I would love to see in the comments or DM us. I'd love to see some actual people flushing out the concept of how their own fears can impact other people's bravery. You know, think of experiences in your life where you fucked it up for somebody, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple of things there. The parenting thing, I think we kind of referred it to a parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
And then what comes to mind, and it's funny that we spoke about the climbing frame thing, and we referenced this when we talked the other day, is it what happens is I'm in that approach where I'm very mindful and I'm trying to unlearn that, and and that worry, and I'm also petrified, right? Like your 3-year-old up a
Yeah.
20-foot climbing frame, and I know that Nikki feels the same way, and what she'll often say to me out of earshot of Harley is, I'm terrified. I'm just gonna walk away and not watch while this happens. So if I was to say, oh, I'm terrified too, let's stop her, that starts to um that starts to have that impact, and that will result on Harley. So sometimes, and it works both ways, right? There's things that I may be scared of or whatever, and it really helps to be able to impact. So it's not just impacting our child parent relationship, it's it's affecting our
Of
spouse
course.
relationship as well. And we have to be, and I know that then Nikki will say to me, oh, you know what, I might have been scared, but you're right, she was fine. I'm like, yeah, you know what, I was being cautious, but at the same time letting her have that
Yeah.
space to grow and play and develop. So it definitely has that
Well,
effect as
you,
well,
you
right? So
you think about, and great comment, by the way. I think you were reading it while you were talking because I could see you were captivated. I was reading it and I got a big smile on my face because, yeah, this is the last 20 years of my life as a parent. Yeah, can you not play with the hatchet? It looks dangerous. And then my kids saying almost exactly that. Well, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. But I think, one of the most common things that, this sort of came to mind, one of the most common things in a relationship that I know a lot of couples might talk about is, so let's say you're an individual that has a real fear of not having enough money, right? It's going to affect your partner's bravery to explore new things in life. Maybe your partner wants to go to school or change careers or take up a new hobby, but a fear that you have will impact someone else's growth. And I think one of the key things that we discussed the other morning was it now makes the critical nature of surround yourself even more important, because now you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who will encourage and support your bravery, not surrounding yourself by people that have too many innate fears that are going to sort of oppress you. We talk about surround yourself a lot, and I think this may be quality number 13 of the surround yourself model. But make sure that if you are surrounded by people, whether it's a workplace, in a relationship, or your friendship circle, make sure that you surround yourself with people that their fear does not fuck up your bravery. Hi,
yeah,
Scotty.
absolutely. And what's up, Scott? um it also, it's even the and sometimes our fears are going to fuck up the bravery of the people we surround ourselves with, especially the closest people. So your closest friends, our partners. It's awareness, though. So here's
Yeah.
the thing: is when you know you're doing it, is then how do you approach it next time? Do you change that? You should be wearing your hat backwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the uniform. We as uniform.
Yeah.
Um, it's definitely you definitely see it. And it's funny, like that. Is your worry of not having enough money affecting your partner? It's like you've been in my house watching. Um, and I'm guilty of that sometimes. Exactly that, right? Like there's that fear of doing something. Do you take a leap into something? And I'm fearful of that a lot. But I've learned that over the years is it starts to redirect, the habits of the people around me. So I have to be very, very aware of that and just kind of,
Yeah.
but history leaves clues, right? And it's never really been an issue. So if it hasn't
Yeah.
been an issue, I'm probably worrying about nothing. So that's a big part. I think about, we talk a lot in our house and about, and this is more of a kind of adult example, but how sometimes we'd like a bit more community. We've moved a lot as a couple and a family, and it's been a bit shooting all over the place. And other than a couple of really long-standing relationships that I have, it's a lot of moving around, so you don't get connected a huge amount. And we had a conversation about this the other day about how is there not community around us, or are we just not looking for it? And that is something else that comes to ring true for me as well, right? It's probably there, but do you have to be brave enough to have that conversation? Do you have
Yeah.
to be brave enough to the street, like we live in like a crescent, to talk to the neighbours across the street and see who's around there and build that little bit of community? Or maybe it's in a social environment, which isn't very common right now because we're quarantined, but within our crescent, there's a lot of people out. They're playing with their kids. It's a very much kind of front garden neighborhood, and it probably took this quarantine for me to start to have conversations with
Yeah.
anyone other than the neighbors either side. And what I've realized is there's a lot of other people with similar age kids, and there's a bit more community than maybe I'd seen. But I was kind of wary of that because I typically am. And then if Nikki's having a moment like that, then we're both kind of stopping each other having that conversation
Absolutely.
and maybe stopping that development of community. So there's just another, a great kind of
Yeah.
adult relationship that might also be affecting it.
And maybe, I mean, the title card of tonight's live is "Fake It Till You Make It." Maybe that's, um, maybe that's, one of the great examples is oftentimes the socialization that adults are fearful of. And I know you and we have our own sort of anxieties around new people and opening up and being social sometimes, but maybe that's a great example is you just fake it till you make it, right? You put yourself out there and you have a chat with your neighbors, and then you start to grow that sense of community, and then all of a sudden it feels like home, but you'll never
Yeah.
know that, right?
Yeah. And the ironic thing, we were talking about our kids and how our things we're afraid of is going to rub off on their bravery. Ironically, I found that since I've become a parent, that it's the fearlessness of our children which elicit a lot of those conversations.
Oh yeah.
So there's a
Oh
whole
yeah.
ironic spin on it that if we, and the same thing applies, right? If we're fearful of that, we guard our kids from that, and we don't, because how do we act when our kids want to say hello to the other 3-year-old over the other side of the street? Is we're pushing them to say
Oh, I
hello,
know.
be polite. Whereas really we're shitheads and aren't polite to fucking anyone. Well, sometimes, but I'm polite. But do you take it further than that? Acknowledgement. Where our kids
Yeah.
want to, the minute there's another kid, they're like, "Come to my house, play with my toys." Like, I'm like, "No, don't come to my house. Don't play with my toys." So
So when
it's
does
a
that go away, do you think? Like when do we learn social fear?
the second that we are aware that others are judging us, or
Mm,
as soon as we are telling ourselves a story that others are judging us,
yeah.
is when it goes away.
Yeah. So as soon as we start to consider, yeah, great point. We should, I think we may find a future host. Um, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the moment that we become cognizant that other people have thoughts, and those thoughts might be about us, and they may not always be awesome. That's when you start to insulate yourself. That's when your fear starts to affect your bravery, right? You insulate yourself from situations that may or may not make you feel uncomfortable. But that's a great comment. But yet, on the other hand, you'll kick your kid in the ass to go play with 6 strangers at a garden party. You know?
Yeah, and again, an ironic thing I just thought of, and maybe I've never really thought of it like this, but as you were speaking, is we're bothered about what others think of us, and and as you said, it might not always be the greatest of things. But if they're thinking, unless we're thoroughly desperate for that connection, and we shouldn't be thoroughly desperate for a connection that's not there. If we're if somebody's not having the best of thoughts about us in an interaction, well, how's that person gonna likely respond?
Right. Yeah.
They're gonna avoid you, which
Yeah.
is kind of what you want anyway if
Yeah.
you don't align. So by guarding our thoughts and what we say and how we act, is we're then maybe encouraging that person into our world
Sure.
by masking who we are, and then we've got this person in our world that doesn't align with us, and then we've got to maybe navigate them out of it. So the irony is, if we were just who we were, the people that didn't like us would just piss off, and we'd all be more happier about it.
Yeah.
And we'd keep the people close to us that are close to us. So, that comment about we have a new host. I spoke to Scott this week. Scott's on here now, and I actually think Rob has a podcast. So if I'm right, I think I am. Then you should put it in, because I don't know what it's called. I apologize, but you can drop it in the
No.
comments here and share it. Share the love.
What the hell? Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's get in the sandbox together.
let's do it. We like a little more is merrier over here. We get everyone involved. But yeah, it's definitely and maybe that's more of a. I think the other thing I was thinking of. There you go. Love it. Dog Walking Inc. See, I was spot on. I didn't know what it was called, so apologies, but now I knew.
Okay. Good.
Brand newbie, join the club. So am I. It's very interesting that we come back round to the joining the conversation and start talking all of our taglines that we has, and maybe it all comes back to that, because we're thinking about adult interactions and community, and increasing our surround yourself. It's going to all be about starting conversations, starting talking, and figuring out if we actually want these people. Like I said, if we start conversations, we're going to soon work out whether it's a we as conversation or a they as conversation, as we talk about, and we're going to then navigate ourselves a certain way. But also in our child relationships or our professional relationships, it's the same thing. We have to have better conversations. We also have to start talking more often about the things that matter and having brave conversations, because it will help on all levels. If we do that with our kids, we have brave conversations, and we rather than just shield them, etc., like we spoke about, is we're having proper conversations. Understand that you should be cautious when you do this, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Be brave, try, because you might slip, and these things might happen, but they're not things to be scared of, because every time you fall, you just get back up.
Well, and I'm sorry to plagiarize our own brand, but it all ties into Be the Pebble. One of the things, and I know you experienced this, and I know I did about a year ago when I started We As Men. To some degree, I know Scott over at We As Dads, and for sure, Kathy and Robin at We As Women. It can be scary to start a podcast. There's a lot of fear in constantly opening yourself up, and in many cases to, We As Men is 58 countries around the world, and I'm opening myself up each and every week to thousands of strangers, many of which I will never ever know. There's a lot of fear in podcasting and being vulnerable. There's a lot of fear in working towards being the best version of yourself. But start to imagine, if I let my fear get in my way, or yours, or Scott, or Kathy and Robin, how much bravery are we impacting just within our listener group? We're talking about our children, but really the macro effect of how your fear can impact the world is fucking huge. So it all starts not with us as podcasters, it all starts with us as individuals. That, Gareth, just like you needed the coronavirus quarantine to start talking to more of your neighbors and get outside of your fear, that's what we all need to do. whether it's your community or whether it's our global community. We all need to start talking.
We're so good at plagiarizing our own brand.
I know it's almost like we've done this once or twice.
Hashtag this, hashtag that. Start talking, be the pebble. Yeah, it's so true, and it, this is something else I talk about a lot. You'll hear it on the podcasts, you'll see it on social media. When you are, however you choose to make a difference, showing up bravely, having a vulnerable conversation, starting more conversations, whatever it is, however you're impacting the world positively by making a difference, it writes the permission slip for everybody.
Yeah.
So this is where sometimes I feel uneasy. I feel like I got to fake it a little bit, Bravery, and I got to hit publish on that podcast episode, and maybe I'm just not having a good day with that, and I don't feel brave, or I feel like there's something in there that I said, and I'm not sure how it's going to be taken. And we spoke about that this week as well. It's hard to hit that button sometime and publish it, but what I remind myself of is that even if I don't feel brave, I have to fake it, because I know that it's going to give someone else permission. I've already had, and there's a handful of downloads, and there's a few people listening to it, which I really appreciate. And, I hope that grows and grows. I've already had a few comments about how it's giving license to people to show up differently already.
Absolutely.
And that's what's at front of my mind always.
Yeah. You used a really important word, and, the guest that I had on Monday's show is a biological geneticist. She's a PhD doctor, and she's done tons of data-driven research. Oh yeah, that was crazy. But one of the words that she uses a lot is, and this is common for both men and women, and it's like a dirty word we need to strike from our vocabulary, but it's permission. Right? We constantly are either directly or indirectly asking for permission. And I would say that's so connected to fear as well. And that is something that I really think, and you just gave a great example. You have to fake it until you make it. You have to be able to get away from constantly trying to look for permission, because nobody's going to give it to you. Only you can. Right. So what's the worst that's going to happen? So you say some stupid shit and you click publish on your podcast and everybody hates it. So, right. But
yep.
Or it's not, which it isn't, and people love it, and you change the world. So, if
it's so
given
true.
Those two options, you gotta be brave and don't worry about permission every single time.
Yeah, or know that, and I agree with you. And I'd like to say, in the ideal world, and we make such a big impact on the We As channels that we have, that we're all not looking for permission. But here's the reality. Here's the brutal truth of it. We will always look for, in some cases and in some others not, we're always going to look for a little bit of permission. And especially when you are growing. If you're not out there kind of looking for permission to be brave about something, a new job, a new direction in life, moving to a new house, whatever it is, if you're not looking for those things, those permissions, kind of the signs in the universe, however you refer to it, the likelihood is you're stagnant and you're in your comfort zone. Because when you're in your comfort zone, you're not looking for permission because you're so comfortable with everything. You just are like, this is me. So flip of that, and not that I disagree, but I'm just thinking of it through another lens. Is it, again, it comes back to the, I'm looking for permission, but every time I take a step, the whole 10,000 hour reference that we made earlier, every time I take a step in that direction, I'm looking for a little bit less permission as I master the skill of bravery and whatever it is. So maybe eventually with podcasts, I think about my professional career, 20 years, I look for a lot less permission when I do shit work. Yeah. Because I'm so confident in that I've done these things, and every time I've waited for permission, it's always kind of been granted to me. So, history leaves clues, right? So but I'm then going to be stepping up, right? Or I'm looking to grow more within my career. Or I'm looking to grow more within podcasting. So I'm going to have to do something brave in order to grow, which
Yeah.
means I'm going to probably lean back on the looking for permission.
And maybe the flip side, what I was thinking is maybe the flip side, or the alternate lens. If you are feeling fear, and now we may be getting a little convoluted, but fear can also be a very healthy reminder that you're moving in the right direction, that you're growing, that you're not stagnant. You know, try and find one thing a day to be fearful of, and not like fucking rattlesnakes, but something interpersonal, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, mental. Try and find one thing a day that kind of makes you get butterflies in your tummy.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, there's some, I still get it. And I mean, I've done, I don't know, 50, 60 shows. I still get it with certain guests, where I feel very fearful, and I disqualify myself, and I don't feel legitimate, and I feel like I need permission to talk to a certain guest, somebody that's, maybe got 3 PhDs and a master's. But it's during those moments I know it's right, because when I feel doubt and fear, and when I feel like I want to back out of something, that's when I know I have to go forward, because it's my own, my fears that affected my bravery as a child. It's my own shit that's coming up for me, right? And you can't let yourself, you can't stop just because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Reminds me of and talk about the feelings. This is how I kind of deal with that. And I shared this recently with a couple of colleagues. And we were having a conversation about being nervous. And it was nervous. I think we were referencing um, kind of like the digital world that we're in right now due to quarantine, and the kind of nervousness, that little bit of kind of butterflies about, the um, about being in front of the camera, or,
Yeah.
whether you're presenting, and all these things that kind of, I feel like sometimes pass me by a little bit in regard from an emotional standpoint. And I was listening to a podcast about kind of emotional triggers, and this is a while ago, but it's something that really made it land home for me, and I realized why. And what the guy that was some freaking, like you said, 3 PhD emotional specialist guy was talking about emotional reactions, and what he basically was saying is when you think about how you feel when you're nervous, the butterflies in your stomach, the anticipation of what's to come, and all these things that we refer to as being nervous. When they look at it from literally like sensors on the brain, studying people's brains, the the difference between the emotional reactions in your body of nervousness and excitement are minimal, like
Right.
minuscule differences.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the same thing. So when everyone ever says that to me, or say, oh, I'm really nervous about X, Y, Z, I'm like,
Yeah.
being nervous is the same thing as being excited.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to do things they're excited about?
Yeah.
And that's how I've presented the world of, like, digital stuff, and finding a comfort level with stuff that I'm very, very privileged and honored to get to do on a regular basis. But that's how I approach it. And whenever I think it is nervous, that's how I kind
Yeah.
of overcome it, if you like.
Great point. It's about the framework, you know. Um, so we maybe should have, yeah, exactly, Rob.
Yeah,
We
100%.
maybe should have done a little housekeeping when we started the show, but I had suggested let's try and keep these shows a little tighter. I think not last week, but the week before, I think we were in the middle of a sentence and the 1 hour was up. And I was like, oh shit. So we're going to try and keep them a bit tighter, sort of closer to half an hour. But there was a couple things that I wanted to say is we would, we would welcome if anybody's got a topic or a subject that they want us to try and explore, or just to unpack a little bit. You can send us a DM, or even just shoot it in the comments right here. And what today's Thursday, so just so that everyone knows, today was the official launch of our fourth our fourth member of our We As podcast family. Today, We As Women Start Talking launched officially. So, Gareth, you're a month in, 5 weeks in, and they just launched. Scott's killing it. We As Men is growing. So the only other piece of housekeeping is if there's anybody that's got an idea for a podcast and they would like to join the We As family, also shoot us a comment or a DM or whatever. Old-fashioned telephone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if this is a obviously this is live, and there's a lot of people obviously dropping in and out of this that will see this. But if you're watching, we're going to post this up on the We As page. So if you're watching this after the fact, same deal. Drop it in the comment of the Instagram TV post, and we will get back to you. Or again, like Carl said, drop it in the DM.
Yeah, man.
We're looking to build as much traction, communication, and just continuing these conversations after the actual live event. So yeah, get involved.
Good job. All right, man. I feel pretty good. You feel good?
Yeah, man. It's a good one. Like it. Short, sweet, and got everything in we needed.
It's funny when you and I think a 35-minute conversation is short and sweet. Like the average, I was about to say something stupid, maybe not untrue, but it's like the average man would think a short and sweet conversation is an exchange of 2 or 3 sentences.
Sweet. Yeah, bro. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you and I, it's like almost 40 minutes, and that feels like I'm like, this feels a little bit premature, because our 2-hour talks in the mornings, and of course you've been on my podcast a couple times, and they were all over 3 hours. So, yeah. But and yes, Scott Kelly, you are a great editor. Shout out to Scott Kelly. He's worked his ass off and done such a great job supporting people like me and Kathy and Robin, who maybe don't have that technical prowess. But anyways, that's it for this week.
All right, man.
We'll see you guys soon. Remember, please try and be the best possible versions of yourselves. Love and peace.
Always.
See you, Jimmy.
Peace out.
Love you.
Love you, man.